This morning, along with Rekha. We haven't seen you in a while. Rekha Basu with Rekha's voice in this morning. You've been traveling.
I've been traveling, and then I was sick, and it's been more than a month, I think, since I was here.
Well, welcome back. I'm always excited to have you back. And we have quite a few things to talk about, besides what your article is here most recently. But you want to talk a little Grassley this morning, because he had a meeting with the president yesterday.
He had a meeting with the president yesterday, which first he was, and of course, Grassley is our senior Republican senator in the U.S. Senate, and he is also the chair of the Senate Judiciary Committee, so he wields a lot of power on the national stage. And this Supreme Court vacancy, of course, has arisen with the death of Antonin Scalia, one of the most conservative members of the court. So there's this big scuffle now between Republicans and Democrats as to wanting to replace a person who is more in line with his views or more liberal from the Democrat side. But what has happened here is that Grassley and Mitch McConnell, the Senate Republican leader, have basically dug their heels in and tried, I would say, to rewrite the Constitution by saying that the position should be left unfilled until next year's presidential election is over and there's a new president sworn in, because it is somehow the will of the people that has to be reflected in the election. Now, Obama has another year left on his term.
I was going to say, I believe I heard a statistic this morning that it was the last gap of there being a judge was like 6 months. And we're almost talking a year.
There are some very significant cases coming up. There's abortion law in Texas. There's a variety of other cases, and they're going to be one justice short, which does not make any sense that they would leave it like that without a swaying vote.
Well, what's the harm in that? Can you explain a little bit?
What's the harm in leaving?
If it ends in a tie?
If it ends in a tie, then what happens? I mean, that's I think why they have 9 justices, is that there has to be one vote that will override the rest. But I think that what's really dangerous actually is the whole premise of this notion that, because he happened to die, Scalia happened to die during a Democratic president's tenure, that the Republicans will do anything to obstruct his ability to appoint someone. And Obama has actually sort of, I would say, bent over backwards to say, we'll consider Republicans, we'll consider anyone you put up, anyone the Republicans in the Senate put up for a nomination for the judiciary, but they are unwilling to even consider or have conversations about naming another justice until a new president is sworn in. Now, how is this in keeping with the will of the people? Article 2, Section 2 of the U.S. Constitution specifically says that it is not just a president's right, but duty, sitting presidents, to nominate someone for the Supreme Court, and then the Senate has the role of advice and consent. They get to hold hearings and they get to vote up or down. And nobody's taking away that right from them, is the thing. They could still veto or torpedo anyone that Obama put up, but they don't even want to let him have the chance.
I think that's the biggest issue I have, because it's been flip-flop before.
Democrats, this has been on both sides.
Democrats have done the same thing.
80 years.
Are we one nation under God? I mean, it's just like it's two teams here anymore.
And we've
it really is
in history where there have been 7, 8 justices on the court. I mean, it's not the first time we haven't had a 9-justice court either.
Right,
so,
but this kind of obstructionism has never resulted in this kind of a standoff before. I mean, certainly people are quoting Joe Biden and saying he said things. He gave speeches, but it didn't actually result in, this kind of end result. He wasn't able to obstruct the process, and it was him. It was one speech. But now, Senator Grass, I'm so disappointed in him, frankly, and I think a lot of Iowans are, because he used to be fairly bipartisan in his approach, and he was willing to listen to reason and listen to the other side. But he has really thrown his lot in with the Tea Party group, and he was at first even refusing to meet with the president, which is customary when there's an opening on the Supreme Court. He said no, he wouldn't meet, and then when he finally reluctantly agreed to meet, he said, but they wouldn't talk about the court nomination. They wouldn't even entertain any discussion about it, that he would rather talk about opioid abuse and what laws can be written, which is not what the purpose of the meeting was. So they finally did have this meeting yesterday with Mitch McConnell, and apparently, according to Harry Reid and what he told reporters afterwards, they were just digging their heels in the sand and saying they will not consider anyone. And Obama said, you put someone up. But no, and Obama even was considering nominating a sitting governor.
There was speculation that he was going to nominate
Sandoval, who is conservative and has actually some views that are at odds with Obama's on issues like gun control, and he's sort of been checkered about abortion rights, but still still, and he pulled himself out. He probably seeing which way the winds were going on this, just pulled his name out and didn't want to be a part of it. But I mean, at least Obama is trying to be reasonable with them. I was not in favor of this particular nomination had it happened, and it was just a rumor at this point, because I thought that Obama was giving too much away. If Sandoval had in fact been nominated, he was not in keeping with some of Obama's top priorities, or many people's top priorities for the country, including gun control. But you know, I'm just so thoroughly disappointed with the obstructionism on the Republican side in the Senate.
But Obama is still looking to make a nomination.
He's looking to, but I mean, what power does he have if the Senate refuses to consider it and they hold the majority? So the Republicans hold the majority. So it's really, I mean, it remains to be seen what's going to happen.
Okay, and really quickly this morning, we want to talk about a special report that the Des Moines Register is doing with local universities as well.
So the Des Moines Register has been doing an ongoing series about race and racism in Iowa, and they're looking at the public universities in Iowa, where they've sort of done some surveys and talked to a number of students of color and found that there are just persistent feelings of discrimination, of exclusion, what sociologists are now calling microaggressions, which are these little things that build up every day, and they don't necessarily amount to overt hate crimes, for example, or racism that you could take to court, but there are signals that are being sent to the students that they are not welcome there. For example, there are examples of people who, you know, were told by roommates that they didn't want to, or potential roommates, that they didn't want to room with a black person. Or people, I mean, can you imagine being that overt about it?
In today's time.
Still in today's time.
And there we are.
Exactly. And so they all add up to this feeling of not being wanted, not being welcome, and that often the university administrations or faculty just stand by and do nothing about it. So it's pretty appalling that that's going on. I mean, it's understandable that in a predominantly white state there might be cultural misunderstandings or, you know, bad feelings or suspicions that are not necessarily based on anything except lack of exposure. But then the universities should take the offensive and do diversity training, or, you know, make it clear that these kinds of slights will not be accepted, and try to bring students together. But they're not. And yet they want to boost their numbers by bringing in minority students from bigger cities, you know, to make it look like they have more minorities. So it's just a really, really bad situation right now, and a lot more work needs to be done on it.
Okay. Read more about those reports in the Des Moines Register. You can also check them out online at DesMoinesRegister.com and check out Rekha's voice. Great to see you, Rekha. Thank you for joining us this morning.